things glorious in the grim darkness of the far future. My name is Alex.
My name is Vangel.
All right, guys, and we are back. It is the new year, and we're going to be talking about hobby resolutions and goals. We definitely had a paradigm shift after starting the show last year and actually following through with this narrative campaign that we've been talking about, and it's led to like a lot of inspiration and just a like I said, a paradigm shift on how we want to proceed going forward, because we were just talking about this before the show. This whole process has really made 40k the most fun it's ever been for both of us this year. And we just want to talk you guys through that and seek to enhance it in the year to come.
And also, just to tie in all the Battle Brothers into what a fireside chat looks like between my brother and I. This is something that we do on all holidays and birthdays and things like that. Honestly, reflecting on the year and making some oaths and resolutions to improve, but also celebrating the victories, and want to tie you guys into that. So yeah, let's get started on it.
Yeah, let's start off with some hobby progress. We'll keep this section relatively short because we have a lot to say about what we've been doing lately, and how it relates to our resolutions and goals for next year. So I'll lead off. I finished 10 Wraith Guard. That was a very significant painting project. I was talking to Wes the other day, just yesterday actually, and it's like I can paint up a Wraith Lord in a single sitting. But doing 10 Wraith Guard is pretty timely. I mean, each Wraith Guard is about like half the size of a Wraith Lord, so it takes a lot of painting. They're easy models to paint, but it is a bit time consuming. So I finished 10 of those, and I based and started doing blocking out all the colors on my Wraith Knight. And I finished up his scenic base, which is really cool. I ordered 2 more fire prisms, so I have a full squadron of 3. And I made some major hobby progress on a secret project that I'm working on.
It's okay. You can say it now.
No. This guy's not getting any inside info. He's opening up my Amazon packages, trying to figure out what I'm ordering.
That was a feint. I didn't actually look.
But I'll talk about this in my hobby resolutions, because there's like some certain painting techniques that I wanted to learn. And after a disaster initially with them, I got the hang of it, applied it to these models that I'm working on, and I'm really excited that I've finally gotten over a major hobby hurdle, a major painting goal of mine. So tons of models painted up, hundreds and hundreds of points painted and ready for the next game. So I'm really excited.
All right. So yeah, I was very active in the studio, and it's gonna play into my resolution, and also talking about like opportunities, things I could have done better from last year. But hobby progress for this time around is I painted one of my hellhounds, and I did it in the pattern of the bloody shoulder. So it's got, it's all black with red and white. I painted and remodeled 19 Kasserkin, and also built and painted a Warpsmith in the Iron Warrior scheme. And then I just started, I'm like 75% there on Usarker Creed. I'm going to have 2 Creeds in my army, just as a fun narrative. Yeah, that was what I did, and there's a lot to say about it, but in a nutshell, that's what I got done.
Nice. So Big Daddy Creed and his daughter, pretty cool. It's awesome to see that classic model in your collection. And it's crazy. It's all those old models are just absolutely flying off eBay right now. There's a huge renaissance for all the old school stuff. So really good that you snatched that guy up.
Definitely funny story behind Creed, and I think I might have mentioned this in the last one, is I've struggled to find a warlord that I really like for, forever. And yeah, I was definitely talking about it in the last episode. So I got Ursula, and then I was looking for different models online, and I found Usarker Creed Recast. And I was like, oh, let me get this guy. I always hated him. Okay, this goes back to a Vendetta gunner named Mammy. In the back of the Vendetta, there's like two heavy bolters, and the gunners that go with them are just regular Cadians, but one of them was like screaming, his mouth is open, and this is back in the day when I first started like getting back into Guard and into Warhammer. So I'm like painting this guy, and it's like I'm, of course, like an asshole. I'm going all out on a guy that's like in deep inside the
hull of
the Vendetta. You'll never see him, but I kept messing up his face, and I painted him again and again and again, and eventually levels and layers of paint built up to make this guy like some liver lips lunatic. I mean, it was ridiculous. And so every time you look at him, we just said, "Oh, that's Mammy." He's like, "Mammy." Anyways, so then after that, which was like 20 years ago or something, every guy that we thought, like the old sculpts and stuff like that we thought looked lame, or were like, man, this motherfucker is ugly as sin, called him the Mammy, called him the Maminator. And I mean, Usarker Creed is the ultimate Mammy. I mean, he's the ugliest guy. His head is like probably like 3/4 of his body.
Head weighs like 45 pounds.
Yeah, although I showed him to Margaret last night, my wife, and I was picking up the model, and she's like, "Oh, is it headless?" Because the coat,
the cowl,
the it's not a cowl. It's
the collar.
Yeah, the collar is just so high up
that
you couldn't see it. And it's like, fuck no, he's not headless. This dude's got a watermelon on his neck. And so, anyways, hated him forever, but now I really love him. I'm having fun painting him, and creating a fun narrative actually between Ursula and Usarker, and we're going to talk about that in future episodes.
Yeah. So, good way to close out the year, definitely. Those Wraithguard are absolutely classic models. Big Daddy Creed, absolutely classic as well. Yeah. Amazing in the lore. For anyone who read Fall of Cadia and the Gathering Storm, he went out like an absolute boss. He's not actually dead. He's just trapped.
Missing.
Yeah.
He's missing.
Captured by Trazen the Infinite, who desperately needs a model. But yeah, so we closed out 2023 really strong, and we learned a lot, and we're excited for sort of like refocused approach to getting units and models done, and we're going to talk about that today. So let's just talk about our opportunities for last year. That's a work term that we both share, unfortunately, but it's a good one. And by opportunities, we just mean room for improvement, like things that we could do differently, do better.
Something left on the table.
Yeah. So, dude, why don't you talk about yours? Because I think you had a bunch of interesting things to say when we were chatting before the show.
Yeah. I mean, so I think what I'll do is I'll talk about my opportunities and go into my resolution, because it's just hand in hand.
Yeah,
really.
Go for it.
So my big opportunity from last year was just organization and like prioritization, essentially, in terms of like hobbying, but also in terms of like gameplay. Like anyone who's listened to the previous episodes knows, since we launched the podcast, I got way more into the rules and not tactics, because I feel like I've always been tactically minded, but just sort of investing time in the right things in terms of studying the game. So yeah, basically I'm just going to mash it all up, because the organization and prioritization was the big opportunity for me. And over the past month, that's really what I focused on. Actually, it's been something that I've been working on for a long time in terms of like my bits organization and stuff like that. Like a long time ago, I had like 4 or 5 large cardboard boxes full of bits on sprues. And one day I was like, I can't spend 4 hours looking through all these sprues trying to find everything. So I clipped off all the bits and I sorted them in like a tackle box, essentially. And that's the kind of thing that I did over the past month with everything hobby related. I talked about my lamp and some of the projects that sit up there, and I'm staring at them. But honestly, it's not just my lamp. It's like I had my whole army, my fully painted army, was sitting in boxes, cardboard boxes, like throughout the room. Cardboard box is a fucking 1.5 feet tall, and I've got these maybe an inch tall models lining the bottom, and like it just makes no sense. I don't know where things are. I don't know what's in what box. And so every time I want to go
unit loadouts, you have to dig through all that shit just to figure out like, what do these infantrymen have? Like, and like, what box are they in?
Yeah, even just what box they're in. I had to like write on the outside of the box what they're in. And funny story about my brother's treachery. So he got me a army bag.
Oh God!
Yep, he got me an army bag, and
this is like
army
20 years ago.
It's not 20 years ago. It's not. It's like fucking
15.
It's 10, bro. So he got me this army bag, and honestly, I was thinking about it recently. I just think it's a terrible idea. The army bag, where it's like basically a canvas bag with layers of foam. You pick out the foam, you stick your models in there, and like every time I would. Oh, so the story is that he stole 3 layers of the foam. He gave me the present. Then he was like, "Hey, can I have those?" And I was like, "Sure."
I waited 3 years for you to actually come to the hobby store with me. That never ended up happening.
That's true.
So I was just like, "Can I use this?" And because he was too weak to go to the hobby store, he said yes. I'm afraid, Billy.
Oh my God! Such treachery, such lies,
perfidious Eldar,
as you would expect from a witch tainted by the warp. But yeah, so he's like, "Oh yeah, you can have those." I said, "Yeah, you can have those," and then come to find out, you couldn't replace them.
Yeah,
you can't reorder them, and you can't find them in the right dimensions. So I had nothing to store my army in. So, anyways. Boxes all over the place, and after the last episode, talking about my Kasserkin and stuff, and just reviewing all the loadouts and everything, the changes in 10th edition, I was like, okay, I've got to go back and remodel basically all my infantry. So that's, at the time, it was 30 Kasserkin, 30 Cadians, 30 Catachan, because the sergeants need bolt pistols. Every Cadian squad gets 2 special weapons. Every,
all the
Catachan squads, yeah, basically. But turning my what were like I think 8th or 9th edition veterans into Kasserkin, I needed to update them. So, long story short, pulled out all my my Kasserkins and went to remodel them. And wow, what a bear it was. And I had a lot of extra. They're actually, so my Kasserkin are the extreme hostile environment Cadians from Forge World from 1,000 years ago. Now they're ridiculously expensive. So I'm so glad I have them, and so glad I have the numbers. But basically what I did was I refigured like 9 of them or something to carry plasma guns. So now I have 40 Kasserkin. Each squad has 2 grenade launchers and 2 plasma guns. And that process was a bear. And what it just made me realize was that, like, if I don't have my projects, like, all my models and stuff up in front of me, something that's organized and that I can see, like I'm not going to be able to efficiently tackle that.
Plan. You can't plan.
I have no plan.
Yeah. You're just digging through boxes, being like, what do I do next?
Yeah, and honestly, it wasn't just my models. Like, my desk was just, everyone while you're working, I don't know, maybe there's some, like, Warhammer angels out there who, are extremely tidy the entire time they work. But, like, for me, probably like most people, your desk gets messy the more you work. And you may have like one project that's modeling, one project that's painting, one weird conversion, something to remind you, like my lamp, like, oh, I need to get around to this. So what I did was I ordered a carrying case and a display case. Mostly it's a display case because I'm not going to play out much. Mostly I just play here at home. If I do play out, it can be that, but it's like a MDF case with a plexiglass lid and magnetized trays. So I magnetized like 120 infantry plus my Ogrins plus a bunch of HQ choices, my assassins. Most of my army I tucked away into a single case that sits on my desk now. And it really brings so much, enjoyment, and it's very gratifying to be able to look at my army and see, everything that I built and everything that I painted.
It puts your progress up in front of you where you don't feel like, you're just stuck in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
With your collection.
And also I know that everything in that is done.
Exactly.
That's the thing that's sitting in front of me. This is done, and everything not in the case is not done, essentially.
Yeah, like when I was doing my Wraith Guard, for example, like I painted up 5 completely. So I'd bring those 5 out every time I was painting, and as I was finishing up the last 5, I'd add 1 to the fully painted section. I'm like, this is looking awesome. This is looking awesome. Like, so each time I added a model to the finished area, it just inspired me all that more to keep going. So yeah, keeping that progress in front of you is really important.
Yeah, and also the thing with the Casterkin, I think sort of like what you were saying about the Wraith Guard is when you're painting them, you don't realize. I was thinking when you were talking about it, like, so you've got Wraith Lords, which are just they're maybe 3/4 bigger or whatever than
they're
like the Wraith Guard is
times.
like, okay, 2 times half the size or 3/4 the size, whatever. But like the like surface space on that model as opposed to the Wraith Lord is probably not. They look much bigger, but like the surface area that you're painting is not that much smaller. You know what I mean? It's almost an equal size. And this is the thing I want to talk about is like, so when I remade the Casterkin, it was like I popped off all these arms. I had like torsos and heads and legs that were painted, but not arms. Then I had some torsos that needed to be painted, not the legs. All this kind of stuff. It was just all over the place. And it really gelled for me that like that level of disorganization when you're trying to tackle a project makes it exponentially harder. Like if I was painting like completely start from scratch like prime minis, I would have like blown through that. 19 minis, like, it took me the time of like painting 40 or something.
Because each model, you basically have to formulate a new game plan based on how much is painted.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is why I strip all my models when I do my rehab projects. I don't care if they're like, oh, this looks pretty good. I shouldn't redo this. I'm going to spend just as much time trying to like color match the highlight scheme that I used and all that bullshit. It's a nightmare. Half finished models are a bear.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do that, and I went for it, and I thought it was going to save me time. And honestly, I don't know if like matching arms to body or whatever was the thing that slowed me down. I think it was more, I think it was more the fact that every time I pick that model up, I need to look at it and determine like where am I at with this model.
Yeah, yeah.
And that like stopping and thinking and looking slows down the process so much because you have to reevaluate your game plan of like, okay, am I basing? Am I highlighting? Am I washing? What am I doing? And so like that's sort of like the big opportunity for me is like in terms of approaching the hobby, it's like minimizing the time of like what am I doing with this thing and knowing that like so minimizing that, reducing that, eliminating that to be that every time I come to my hobby table, I know what the project is that I'm working on. I know what stage I'm at. So yeah, I just cleaned everything up and I organized everything as much as I could. And I have to say that I definitely lied in the last episode, because I was saying, oh, I have no more old projects that I need to rework. And having listened back to it, I was like, oh man, there are some. And just so everyone knows, the things I have left to do are going to be the Catachan special weapons. I'm going to replace 3 las guns with heavy flamers, with melta cannons, with titanic plasma cannons. Just kidding. 3 las guns with flamers, and then I have 3 Lehman Russ that need to be kitted out. But I was talking to my brother about it too. Is like, do I actually need those things right now? That's what I need to figure out. But I don't want to leave half-finished projects out either. So just sort of processing all of that stuff and spending time each time I sit down at the desk and saying like, okay, I'm going to set myself up next time for success by doing X, Y, and Z and putting that project in front of me. So for right now, Creed has to get done. 3 plasma guns have to get done. And those are the projects that I'm working on right now.
Yeah, and what I would suggest to people too is make an army list. Paint for an army list. Like, I can't tell you how many times in the past I've started all these like crazy projects, and then like it's like somebody hits me up for a game, and like I go to put together an army list and I realize I don't have like any of the units I actually want to use. So something I did last year, which really, really helped me, which shaped my hobby progress the past couple weeks, is I made army lists for all the missions in the campaign that we're going to play. And because in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take that, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take that. And then I realize I'm like, this is a 3,500 point list for a 2,000 point game. And when I try to like take certain pieces out, I realize I'm like, oh, geez, I don't have the tools that I thought I was going to have in this list. And I have to go to like my codex and be like, what do I have in here that's like cheaper in points that can replicate what I'm trying to do? Like where am I going to find this anti-tank that I need? And so, you start going through the index and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, I've got all that stuff on the sprue. I should probably set down this random unit of Harlequins I was going to paint in a new paint scheme just because I thought that that's where I was in my hobby journey right now. And I'm going to go paint these other units. And for me, that's been like one of the best things that I've done all year. And it's because of the campaign. It's like trying to play these narrative missions and trying to play like apocalypse missions too, where you're actually game planning your apocalypse list. It really, really puts into perspective like what you need to win. And man, your army looks so much cooler when you go through that process. So like adding 3 fire prisms to my list, like that's what your army looks like. That's what those sick GW armies look like in the codex or from the White Dwarf and things like that. When you just have a sort of hodgepodge collection of like random lists from like years ago, you just have this odd assortment of models. And now that I've really gotten into game planning my lists and painting for this campaign, my army just looks really, really thematic. I have like tank companies, like full squadrons of tanks. I've got the 3 fire prisms, the 3 warp hunters, 6 hornets. I can only use 3 in, standard 2,000 point games, but I've got that sick long range firepower. Then I've got the deadly short range firepower, and then the sort of hornets floating around in the middle. And it looks cool. It plays cool. And
How is the secret unit going to play? Talk about that.
it's very interesting. It's kind of a combination of all, actually. Yeah, and actually,
Oh, actually, I think I might know what it is now.
you don't.
I think I do.
No, you wish you did.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So, yeah, I'd really just recommend to people to put together your army list, because you can end up spending tons of time on units that, while you want to have painted, you're not necessarily going to be able to use in the next game you're playing. And I feel like people get really frustrated when they go to play games and they don't have the units they actually want. You're like subbing in units that are either not optimal or kind of break the theme that you're trying to bring to the table. So I know for like the mission we have coming up, where it's like a Eldar trying to hold this mountain pass. I was like, God. I was like, am I really just going to drop down like a big unit of Wraith Blades and like a Wraith Knight? It's like, it'd be way cooler if I had, huge brick of Wraith Guard, all 3 Wraith Lords. And now I can do that, and it looks
What
really,
else?
really cool. Intriguing, isn't it? It fascinates you. It scares you.
No, it doesn't scare me at all. Yeah, and I think in the last episode we were talking about, because it had the option to do super heavies, like we were going to do it, and that's why I finished the Bane Blade and all that stuff. And we just decided, actually functionally running a Bane Blade up the center of the board long ways, like that's just going to clog everything up. And we decided that no, I don't think that's the list we want to play.
But I took my Wraith Knight out of that list too. We're just like, let's do that in the Apocalypse game, which is fun. And I feel like those units fit better in an Apocalypse game. They're more points efficient.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like especially like the Wraith Knight. I actually still think the Wraith Knight is really, really good in a 2,000 point game. But, you're sacrificing a lot for that. But in an Apocalypse game, 3,000 points, it's a great choice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Do you want to talk about your resolutions, your goals for 2024?
So one of them I was already sort of talking about was just having like the overall collection in a very tight and thematic place, with like the full squadrons of vehicles for me, like having those 3 fire prisms, the 3 warp hunters, all the hornets, full complement of wave serpents, all of that stuff was a big priority. But the same thing with like the Wraith host. I have like a really legit Wraith host now. I won't list off the units. I've done it 1,000 times. But I have like a complete 2,000 point spirit host at this point. And just when you put all of that stuff on the table, it looks absolutely amazing. It's just very satisfying to be like, yeah, this is like what I was thinking of when I first got into the hobby. It's just really exciting. It's a good sense of accomplishment. And the other thing that I want to do, and it's sort of like breaks down into 2 separate things, is I really wanted to enhance the sort of Corsair aesthetic of my army. I've been listening to Luton on YouTube, and I'm sure he's one of the biggest YouTubers out there, but his Eldar content is absolutely amazing. His like War in Heaven episode, I think it's like an hour and a half long, breaking down like the Eldar mythology, the war against the Necrons, the old ones, the nature of Aeneid, Future of Yanari, all of that stuff is absolutely top tier. And I've always like loved the Eldar and the lore, but I've listened to that so many times that it's really inspired me to sort of take my army up to the next level. So one of the things that I wanted to learn how to do, and it's always been very, very difficult for me, was I wanted to learn how to shade with my airbrush. And I had like the biggest revelation because I was out there trying to base coat my secret project, and it was just a disaster with my airbrush. Like the corn red was just spidering all over the models, and it's like I fooled around with all this stuff so many times. I was just like, you know what, fuck it. I'm gonna go get airbrush thinner. I'm gonna go get flow improver, all this stuff, and I'm gonna get some paints to shade with. I was like, I'm gonna figure this out. Like, I'm not gonna mess with this anymore. So I stripped all my secret project models again. This is the second time I've had to do it.
Oh,
And
that helps.
so I was able to get the corn air through it all, like somewhat good. It was a struggle. And then I started putting the Army Painter brown through it to do the shading, and it was coming out like a dream. And I was like, this is the issue. It's this GW paint. I've never used anything through the airbrush besides this GW paint. And the corn air is just really thick. So I sat out there for like a couple of hours, like shading all of my models, and it was really, really fun and gratifying. And it's like a technique that I've wanted to learn, and I realized I was like, wow, like with a little bit of trigger control and properly thinned down paint, this is easy. So I can go and take all of my old vehicles and just do like a bit of shading, and it's going to look great. And the other thing that I want to do is get some custom transfers made up. I've been going through online and screenshotting a bunch of old Eldar transfers, and I'm gonna either send it to Fallout Hobbies or maybe Scumbag Customs and have some custom transfers made up to really get that Corsair theme screaming. I thought about using like the Drukhari transfers that are out there. And this is not a knock on anybody, but just like whenever I look at those, they just look like 90s tribal tattoos to me. And they're not really, they're Drukhari, they're not Corsair. So, yeah, being able to just do a little bit of deep shading on my vehicles with a bunch of cool transfers, I really feel like will give them more of a Corsair vibe. Because people's painting has come a long way. Like my army used to look like really impressive like 10, 15 years ago, but there's been like a huge hobby renaissance, and it's time to up my game. I haven't felt really like the need to improve my painting skills in a long time, but I have recently, and it's fun to have gotten across that threshold in terms of like being able to use my airbrush in a better way and make my army look cooler.
Yeah, I'm glad you finally reached that milestone, because how many, what do they call it, rage quit flip?
Rage quit, table flip.
Yeah, situations have you had with that airbrush?
Yeah.
Even though you were able to use it, it was like the amount of times that it failed was just like 10 trillion to 1.
Yeah. It's that corn air. I didn't realize, I thought it was thinned down. I just couldn't figure out what was going on, but just running different paint through it, I was like, oh, well, this is the problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope that helps any of our listeners who are having trouble with the airbrush and stuff like that. I mean, something else I wanna just mention and talk about is to give some shout outs to some folks who I've been following recently. And first one I want to mention is map_man23 on Instagram. He's got some awesome boomfire metal Cadians, rattlings that he's been posting, and I just recently found him. And it was just such a nostalgia train for me.
Yeah.
I remember buying these guys. God knows where they are. I wish I still had them.
Which ones? The Rattlings?
No, just Cadians, metal Cadians,
oh, dude,
the blister
I love
packs.
those models. They're still good.
Yeah, they're obviously this guy makes them look awesome. So much character in them, and just so fun to see. While everyone's like getting like the new Cadians, these guys still
They still
just,
got it.
yeah, they got it, dude. They're living, like I said, like that mammy life, and that's the shit that got me into this. So
Yeah.
just really love what he's been doing and posting. Um, Also want to appreciate Valley underscore of, well, I won't say all the underscores. Valley of the Wolves painting for his deathcore of Krieg models. They're awesome. And totally a different like painting philosophy than mine, which is what I really like about it. For me, when I'm painting, I want to outline every Aquila. It needs to be in a different color than the hull. The hull, like I need to on the hull, I need to decide like which panels are going to be like metallic and which ones are going to be like the standard, standard colors.
Yeah.
But he's just, I like to say it's minimalist. Sounds like I'm taking away from it, but there's so much character because he does everything mostly in like a deep blue. It's so effective. It's so impressive. It just like sets the mood. Yeah, I just really love.
If you look at like old army tanks, everything is just in that green.
Yeah, like in real life.
Yeah.
We're not trying to like make like like big signposts on top of our tank saying "Here I am."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, it looks tremendous, and also I think it was his shadow sword, Baneblade. It's just like a scenic.
Like a diorama.
Yeah, it's like a diorama. It's
Yeah.
like he's got the loading crew, a loading crane, all this stuff. It looks fucking awesome. And lastly, this is one I just came up on. Adam's hobby stuff. His Nurgle Knight looks amazing. He's got the great unclean one like built into the hull. That shit was amazing. So cheers to all you guys, and thanks for keeping us inspired. Really love all the content that they've been putting out. So
Yeah, I want to give a shout out too to an Instagram bro, Baharath's Bodega. He's an Alatok player, and I saw him like it was his shading technique, like actually using browns in the shading of his dark blue Alatok vehicles. I was like, man, it's like it's such an effective color choice because it instantly just like implies weathering while like simultaneously shading the models as well. Because I was planning on doing what's it called, Galvorback red through the airbrush to shade my models, but that's more like purple. There's more purple in that than brown, and that would really just sort of change the palette on my models a lot. So when I saw his absolutely awesome looking Alatok army, and he has a lot of transfers on there too, it really reminds me of Star Wars. Just like the old Y-Wings and all that kind of stuff, like the use of the transfers. It's like really effective towards selling like a more grim dark, like boots on the ground type look for Eldar. And for Eldar, it's like a really delicate balance because you want to maintain, I don't know, just that very like sleek look. And you can lose it very quickly if you over weather and just like clutter up your models. So it's just a really nice balance point. It inspired me to like finally just sit down and figure it out like once and for all. So Baharath's Bodega, absolutely killer models and big inspiration going into the new year.
well, it's like you said too. I mean, the painting in the hobby has come such a long way, and yeah, just bringing like classical painting color theory techniques into the hobby. It's like, well, who ever knew? You know what I mean? It's really cool. It's really tremendous. So
Yeah, and one final hobby commitment for me for the new year is I really want to sit down and work out my own narrative mission pack. so you can play through like your typical like sort of planetary invasion and have like a very just a dynamic scoring system that rewards like narrative play. And I've been kicking this idea around for a long time. I suggested it to GW when we were working on 8th edition and Crusade, because one thing that's always that I've never really liked is just scoring on objective markers. I've said this probably in every podcast. It's very abstract. It's not thematic in any way. It's visually uninteresting. And one of the things that I've always thought would be really cool is using terrain features as objectives. So, like an entire ruin, you have to defend this entire ruin in the middle of the board. And I feel like it could set up a lot of cool screening and modeling position things where, like, I gave the example to my brother of like, you rush this unit of guardsmen to hold this terrain objective, and then you defend the perimeter with like a big unit of ogrins to prevent your opponent's scoring units from breaking in and contesting. And I feel like the new objective control mechanic in 10th edition like really lends itself to that, because like the model count is important too. And just the thing that I think would work is like you use those as end of game objectives, and the way you get progressive scoring is through like kill points or victory points. Like back in second edition, you got points based on you got victory points based on the points value of the units that you destroyed. So I feel like if you can come up with like a good like weight the terrain objectives versus the victory points you get from destroying your opponent's units, I feel like you could have a very fun, instantly thematic game just based on like your terrain layout and things like that. So, siege scenarios, all sorts of stuff. I feel like it would be easy to. I feel like it's ripe for the picking, and it's something I've wanted to do for a long, long time. And I've had so much enjoyment just playing this narrative campaign, and it's been so rewarding from like a hobby perspective too. Building like a siege breaker force of Eldar, or a defensive Eldar force and stuff like that. It's made me look at the index in different ways and got me excited for units that I've always wanted to paint but didn't have like a real reason to, just based on like the edition that we're playing, where it's just you just need these little chaff units to run around and do actions and all that boring shit. So the narrative missions have really required you to develop different or just develop different themes throughout your collection. And I want to just make that more concrete, and I want to play into the really cool scoring mechanics that exist in 10th edition and just sort of modernize that for narrative play.
Yeah, I think that will be something really exciting to work on and to grow. And as much as like for hobby purposes, this show has been as much for hobby purposes, like a growing and learning experience as with the rules. And so like the completion of this campaign is going to really inform the next one. And I mentioned to my brother just Morty and Glory just had a tournament, which I think he organized it. And he had something similar. I'm gonna finish the episode. Unfortunately, I had to go to work, but it sounded really cool. It was very similar, and it was massive. It was a massive tournament where like there was 3 armies on either side of the board. It was like 18-foot board.
Wow.
Really cool stuff, but it sort of left behind the tournament play in terms of like the objective tokens and all that kind of stuff. It's built around like truly holding a line or truly seizing an objective.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. Actually, during that tournament, they talked about, or Mordian talked about, like foreknowledge. So players going into the tournament actually had like knowledge of what their opponents, who they were.
Yeah.
And then also like the three guys on one side of the table got together, made a plan, and they had the entire campaign planned out, like battle by battle. And that was something we talked to Tebow about.
Yeah.
Was at the No Retreat that they had a similar setup. And that sort of really just breaks the mold for like your pickup game, like, and all the troubles that come with that.
That's how the team tournaments work too, is like each team has knowledge of like who's on the other team and what the balance of armies are. So they know they have like one Drukhari, one Gene Stealer cult, I mean, you can only take one of each, but just say it'd be like Knights, Drukhari, Gene Stealer cult, Chaos Space Marines, and Admech.
Yeah.
And so like you sort of strategize like, ooh, like we know who's on our team. How are we going to match this up? And I think that's really fun. And I think it translates very easily to campaign play too. And in like the spirit of like the hobby thing too, it also makes you paint functional terrain. It makes you think about terrain like we're thinking about our armies now. And it, like, for me, it's like it's already just like resolving to do this in the new year is already like shifted me towards like looking at new terrain ideas and like what kind of games do I want to play, what kind of terrain do I need to play those games. And that's like really exciting, especially as I wind down like this Eldar project and get ready to do my World Eaters.
Something that I want to mention, because I was just thinking about it while you were talking there, is like, and we mentioned it in the last episode, but like our terrain is awesome. I'm the terrain guy. I love it. But I want to, we've talked about doing the Zone Mortalis board, and we will. But I want to incorporate some new pieces onto our current board. Something that's a little more functional in 10th edition.
Interactive.
And like some ideas, like we never got off the ground. Like I have a humongous hill that I was never able to finish. We have, remember the hill with the building on top and the wraparound road, stuff like that. So yeah, I would say like a resolution is going to be to make like, I don't know, maybe 3 really big terrain features for our current board.
I've been looking around on Instagram and starting to get some new ideas, but I think it's an exciting year ahead.
Certainly. You ready to wrap it up, dude?
Yeah, guys. So just hit us up in the comments, on YouTube or on Instagram, and tell us what you guys are working on. Like, what are your hobby resolutions? What are you looking to get out of the hobby this year? For us, it's more exciting, more dramatic narrative games with tighter collections. And I'm really excited because we closed out 2023 strong, and it's just going to be a lot of fun this year. I think a lot of the heavy lifting has already been done, and now we're going to just be able to enjoy it. Just putting a few finishing touches on what we've got. So we're really excited for 2024. We're going to have a lot more episodes on the way, a lot more content, hopefully some video content in the future too. So just stay tuned, guys.
Happy New Year's.